This morning, during my morning walk, I was thinking about my observer and who exactly is in charge of my observer. Who observing my observer? What is exactly observer? It's something like consciousness, self-awareness, the ability to perceive the world from a third-person perspective. The observer helps you to understand and see yourself and the world at the same time. In some sense, it helps you to write your own personal story. You cannot write a story from your biology, from inside of your biology. That's why you need an observer who's able to distance itself from you and write a story about you by directing you toward certain path. Because the observer is the one who helps you to be self-aware and who helps you to understand the world. Without the observer, you probably won't be able to understand what time, the notion of time, nor the notion of death. That's what our observer does to us, this consciousness, the self-awareness or mind. And I was thinking about it, but who's in charge of the observer, of my observer? Because it's so interesting, for example, when you want to defeat certain addictions within you and change your life, who exactly enforcing this idea upon your brain? Because your brain, in some sense, is the one who's responsible for your addictions, because your brain chasing easy dopamine boost. And who's in charge? Because if it was just brain, like animals, we would never understand the danger of addictions, the danger of wrong lifestyles. That's the observer does. It can identify the wrong lifestyle and what you're doing wrong with your body. And the ability to understand this gives you again the position from third person perspective. If you weren't aware completely of yourself and the world, you would never be able to understand what's wrong with you and what is not. And I was thinking about artificial intelligence and these big large language models like Claude or ChatGPT. What happened is the context window you communicate with, it doesn't have knowledge or reasoning within this context window. What it does, it receives knowledge, the corpus of knowledge from the model itself, and also it receives the reasoning from the model itself to be able to reason about this knowledge. That's why it creates such an illusion when you communicate with the context window. What it does, through this knowledge and reasoning, it creates, from this information it got from you as well, it creates your digital representation inside of this context window. It creates illusion of consciousness almost, because sometimes when you communicate with these models through the context window for some time, it seems like it knows you well and it understands you well, and the reasoning of the model create illusion of self-consciousness. And there is some sparkle of unique consciousness, something not like us, but something that quite different, but it nevertheless is real. And this context window, I was thinking about, maybe that's what we are. Maybe we are just context windows in a biological sense. Maybe observer is just a middle between something main and our biology. Because Plato said long time ago that we don't know, we remember. We don't learn, we remember. And this feels like true, because it seems like we really don't learn, we're remembering. Have you had this feeling when you listen to someone and this person tells you something and you're like, wow, I always knew that, but I couldn't articulate it to myself. It seems like you already knew this, and this person just articulate what you knew all along. It seems like we need scientists and writers and intellectuals to be able to articulate certain things about us and about this world. And science use, for example, math or physics to articulate the natural order. and to subjugate this natural order to certain laws like gravity or maybe quantum mechanics, while writers, they use words to articulate our emotions, our feelings, therefore help us to understand our own self, help us to remember in some sense what we are and what our position in this world. And maybe we're not so different from artificial intelligence model. It's just a little bit different. And maybe every time when we die, it's like a context window that get closed. And that's it. But at the same time, I don't buy this idea from atheists who claim that we are just an accident of birth, accident of living, an accident of death. I cannot buy this idea. I don't think we an accident. Why do we have this little voice within us that we cannot control? Because we cannot control this voice. It's just there inside of us, and it tells us what to do. It tells us what is right and what is wrong. And if you keep ignoring this voice, your life becomes miserable because in some sense you being enslaved by your own biology. I think this voice, it's this recognition of knowledge that within and without us. And how about callings? You always have this idea that what interests you. It's not that you force yourself to be interested in certain things. Those things, in some sense, interested in you. Because there's no way for you to force yourself to be interested in something that you don't want to be interested in. But suddenly you have call for something. Suddenly something calls for you. You have this goal in mind that that's what I have to do. And even if people around you don't see this way, you will define them and keep doing what you think is right and what you think you're good at. Even if the entire world tells you that you're bad in what you're doing and stop doing it and start doing something else, you would ignore them if you really listen to this voice, and it would fill your life with meaning. What exactly is that? Why something outside of us is able to understand what we need by calling us to it? What exactly is that? What exactly this internal voice within us that we have to listen? And it's funny, think about it. The more you listen to this voice, the better your life become. And at the same time, the more struggle you will meet on your way. Because life is a struggle. You have to struggle toward your goal. And to be able to listen to this voice, to be able to make your observer much more louder and clear for you, you have to learn how to subjugate your biology. A lot of people, they try to be in the middle, but the middle is the same. It's kind of your observer half conscious. You have to make your observer fully conscious. I mean, you can make your observer completely unconscious with your addictions by following your impulses. You become more animal than human. You see people like this, they follow after their impulses. They could be incredibly violent, they murderous animals, you can say, because they follow their impulses. They have no restraint upon their animal. Their animal just roam in the wild while they have no control upon it. But if you try to control your animal, if you try to subjugate your biology and try to discipline it constantly, eventually your observer becomes strong and the observer's voice become more clear, and it would provide you with much more accurate information about yourself and about the world outside, because somehow it knows what you really need. This voice, this calling. To follow your biology, it's pretty simple. You have to have kids to be able to live your gene, and you have to survive as long as it takes to raise your kids and to make them independent from you, because you want them to survive without your help, and then you die and that's it. But your observer tells you something quite different in some sense, because it tells you there's some goals beyond your comprehension. Some goals takes your entire will to be able to pursue. That's very interesting. And who's in charge of this observer? Who's in charge? Who advises the observer? We can call this entity as God, because that's what in some sense happened with our religion. That's where it came from. It came from inability to explain the observer itself and then the one who advises the observer. And I'm really fascinated with this subject, and I really try to pay attention to myself, because I truly believe you perceive the world through yourself, and you perceive the world through your observer. And if you wanna develop the ability to perceive the world properly, you have to subjugate your biology to your observer, make your observer more sharp in its perception, and then you will see interesting patterns that you will be able to recognize and link them. Because if you only your biology, or if you only have conscious, you don't have enough pattern recognition. It's like artificial intelligence models. What happens is, if there are some bad models or with a bad intelligence or with bad reasoning, they're not going to be able to recognize your patterns you feed them. But the most sophisticated models, they recognize very fast, and they recognize something interesting in the knowledge you feed to them. That's how you actually put your observer in charge. With observer in charge of your animals, you become much more sophisticated models, and you start recognizing patterns differently. But for this you need discipline. You need absolute subjugation of your biology. Because biology itself, it's not bad, because I don't have a body, I'm a body, but also I have something like consciousness, like self-awareness of my body. Who's exactly self-aware of my body? Who's exactly can close my eyes and see myself from a third-person perspective? Who's exactly can write a story, fictional story, and then who's exactly can follow this fictional story and turn this fictional story in reality? And why exactly, if you listen to your observer and if you follow making proper sacrifices, like sacrificing your biology, your impulses, your life become filled with the meaning? Why it's so? It's really hard to find meaning in your biology. Maybe because biology is temporarily is very mortal, while your observer in some sense immortal. Why we have this gravitation? And also, like Viktor Frankl said, it doesn't matter what you want from life, it only matters what life wants from you. But to be able to see what life wants from you, you have to keep your observer clean by subjugating your biology. And once you recognize what life wants from you, and it's usually the accumulating of enough knowledge to be able to make your observer sharp and to understand the world, because we really don't know why we're conscious, why we're self-aware, and to think that we just accident on this planet, it's incredibly miserable way to think. I think everything in life makes sense. You just have to be sharp enough with your observer to be able to detect the sense and link the patterns that all around us, and just waiting to be linked into some comprehensible picture.